Good morning. Hello, good morning. All right. Wow, we have a full house today. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. How many new people do we have here today? Raise your hand. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for coming. We really appreciate your support. My name is Terry Diamond. I'm thrilled to be your host for today's seminar. Once again, thank you for joining us. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. Can everybody hear me? Okay. After the few housekeeping items, there are pens and paper. Feel free to take them home with you. There's my brochure that outlays all the seminars for the rest of the year. We love it if you come. They're generally on the second Tuesday of every month. But please do RSVP. And most importantly, there's a survey on the table. So the thing with the survey is everybody that fills one out completely and gives it back to me, I do a $50 gift card drawing tomorrow because I really appreciate the feedback. The one question that's most important to me, well, they're all important, but there's a question that says, would you like to have a coffee date with me? So that's really just a one-on-one personal consultation, no charge, no obligation. We sit down, we have coffee, we have breakfast, we have lunch. I don't really do dinner, but we can do cocktails, we can talk about anything. We can talk about my dog or your real estate needs. So I'm open to everything. So please, after the presentation, please fill them out honestly. I love the feedback. Silence your phones if you would. If you need the restrooms, they're out the door to the right. So our goal today is to educate you on understanding fiduciaries, their roles, responsibilities, and impact. We're not here to try to sell you anything. Nobody's here to try to make you do anything you want to do. We're not influencers. It's not a sales presentation. However, I'm just going to take a few minutes and tell you about myself. And that'll be the last I say about me for the rest of the presentation. Most everybody knows I'm a realtor. Okay, that's kind of my day job. Why is a realtor doing these presentations? Because I am passionate about working with our senior community. I'm a certified senior housing professional, and that designation takes many months of education and research, and I'm one of 7 realtors in the entire state of California to have earned that, because this is what I do. I work with seniors, I'm an educator, I'm an advocate, and I'm a realtor, hence these presentations. Hang on while I turn the page. I guide people through the real estate transactions. But more than that, I understand their mental well-being and health, because selling real estate in today's environment is not easy. And especially if you haven't sold a home in 40 or 50 years, there's a lot of stuff that's different. So I'm here to help you, guide you through all that. I maintain a higher set of standards that are often not followed in today's transactions. So real estate can be a churn and burn deal, just like everybody's in it. They don't build relationships with their customers. That's my forte. I have a team of fully vetted, respectable providers such as Peggy and Katarina over there. They're amazing people. Thank you for coming. I have an advocacy mindset. It's all about the client, consistently placing the client's goals before their own interest. So that's me. Enough about me. At the end of the presentation, we'll open up the floor for questions. So if you have questions, please write them down. We'll be happy to answer them after the presentation. But before that, anybody have questions before we get started? Okay, let's get on with the presentation. I'm proud to introduce Tamara Scove and Shannon Dalton from Quinn Fiduciary Services. Quinn's been around for a long, long time. Jackie Quinn started many years ago, and Tamara and Tamara, I want to say Tamara because that's my sister. Tamara and Shannon are really the core of the business, and they're super busy helping people like you with their fiduciary needs. So pardon me while I read this. This is a little bit about them. Tamara Scove received a Bachelor of Arts International Relationships from the University of California at Davis. She has worked extensively in nonprofit management and charitable gift planning, balancing the mission of nonprofit with the needs and interests of donors. She has also managed the employee ethics program for a Fortune 500 healthcare company, providing training on confidentiality in medical decision making. That's so important for what they do. Additionally, she's held a realtor's license for several years, specializing in the needs of senior clients to age gracefully, helping them explore alternatives of aging in place, relocating near family, or moving to retirement communities. I think I might borrow that. Tamara's interest in being a fiduciary developed from firsthand experience when she began helping her mother manage her affairs following the death of Tamara's father. This experience has given her a keen understanding of the nuances of balancing the preservation of the estate, maintaining a lifestyle, and planning for potential future needs. She's passionate about assisting individuals in organizing their affairs and implementing their plans. She recently received her professional fiduciary license and joined the team at Quinn. So welcome, Tamara. Shannon, wave your hand, Shannon. Shannon Dalton received her BS and BA at the Pennsylvania State University before receiving her MBA from George Washington School of Business. She has worked in the nonprofit sector, raising funds for HIV/AIDS organizations and supporting community health centers. Shannon also has had her own insurance company and worked as a licensed health and life insurance agency for Aflac, helping clients to make the best decisions to protect their incomes and families. Shannon took time away from the workforce in 2010 to focus on her 2 children. She became a licensed fiduciary in 2020 after being introduced to the profession in 2017 when her grandfather passed away, leaving her grandmother with dementia and in dire need of support. Having firsthand experience as a trustee and conservator for her own family has given Shannon a unique perspective on the nuances and complexity of serving as a trusted fiduciary. She serves on the board of SAVOR, Santa Barbara Executive Roundtable, and is an associate member of the Santa Barbara Estate Planning Council. Okay, so we have 2 amazing women here to talk about fiduciary services. And I think that's it. Ladies, thank you so much. Now we get to the meat of the program. I've done enough. And here you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Can everyone hear me? Yes. Yes? Okay. As Terry said, well, the first couple slides, I get the easy job because it was our introduction, so Terry already took care of that. So Tamara and I are here this morning to, am I in the way? Hold on, let's figure this out first. Is that better? Yes, okay. To talk to you about what a licensed professional fiduciary does. It's slightly different than just a fiduciary. And I'm going to hand it over to Tamara to explain the difference. Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay, I'll do it. I am technically overwhelmed right now. Just upgraded my phone. I said, you've got to bring the computer. I can't do it. So, I am guessing that several of you, when you saw this, thought, what's a fiduciary? And it's probably confused even more so by the fact that many like financial institutions now say we're a fiduciary organization. So the best way we've come, which I think is great, but the best way we've come up with to describe the difference is fiduciary with a small f as an adjective is someone who has an obligation to put the interests of their clients before their own. So there are many financial planners in town who have a fiduciary interest. Realtors have a fiduciary interest obligation to their clients. So the idea of fiduciary as an example of how one works. Fiduciary with a capital F, or a California licensed professional fiduciary. We are licensed by the state of California, and I will say not every state licenses fiduciaries, so I think it's important that you know that it is a license. We are carefully background screened both from financial and criminal backgrounds and credit scores, and we reapply every year. And we work with whomever needs our assistance. So that can be, we have right now several clients ranging from they have passed away and we're just administering the trust, or we're helping them with a special needs trust for a relative or a friend. So there are many different ways, and we'll get into the details, but we want to start with the difference between fiduciary as a description and fiduciary as what we do. We're going to bounce back and forth because we think that's more interesting. Hope you agree.
So, where do you find a fiduciary, a licensed professional fiduciary? So you can look different places. So for an individual licensed fiduciary, we are licensed individually. So even though we work for a company, Tamara actually, and I bought the company from Jackie back in November, so she's semi-retired at this point, and I'm not quite sure, we've gotten through the rough patch, but the day after the press release went out, we had a client who emailed me and she said, I don't know if congratulations or condolences are in order. You've done this before. So individual licensed fiduciaries, you can go online and you can go to the California Professional Fiduciaries Bureau, and you can look up fiduciaries by your zip code, by city, and then you can find for each of us, how long we have been licensed, if we've ever been sanctioned for anything, how the amount of assets that we each have under our responsibility. And as Tamara was saying, we have our licensure and our background check. We have to report to the state every single year, any updates in whose assets we're managing, cases that have closed, all of that stuff. And we can handle all sorts of different responsibilities. There are other companies that do similar things to what a licensed fiduciary does, and primarily those are going to be banks and trust companies. So you might say, you know what, I don't want an individual handling my estate. I just want to go to Montecito Bank and Trust or Northern Trust and their trust department, and they can do primarily the same financial functions that we can do. They're not licensed individually though. So if you go onto the Professional Fiduciaries Bureau website, you will not find the trust companies. You'll just find individuals. So similar functions, but a different way of searching for them. The big difference is that the banks and trust companies typically do not handle healthcare responsibility. So let's say maybe you don't have anyone who's nearby who you want to name as your healthcare agent. We can also do that for you. Whereas a bank or a trust company is primarily just going to handle finances, so you might still need someone to help you with that next role. Hiding over there.
And we do, I will say a couple of things about serving as healthcare agent. We do that, we generally schedule a separate meeting and ask you a lot of questions, because our role is called substituted judgment. Our role is to substitute your judgment for ours. We are not making the decisions. We are doing what you have told us you want done. And unfortunately, right now we have a few clients where we're navigating that and talking to healthcare professionals who said, I think if we keep this person in the hospital a couple more days, they'll improve. And I say, that's not what he wants. He told me he's had a lot of fun in his life and he's not having fun now. And he has spelled out that he doesn't want anything else done. So this morning we agreed to move him to hospice, which is what he wants. So it doesn't matter what we think, we're doing what you want done. Quinn Fiduciary Services, Jackie Quinn founded it in 2015. She actually got the first year licenses for fiduciaries were available in California was 2008. Jackie got her license there. In 2008, she worked for senior planning services. I glitched for a minute. Senior planning services. When Suzanne McNeely passed away, they decided to move the fiduciary business out, and she started Quinn Fiduciary Services. And while she is retired, and she is thrilled to be retired, we have named her consultant for life. So she has a lot of experience, so we call on Jackie on those really troublesome ones. We do have 4 licensed fiduciaries in our office. We have a daily money manager who is amazing. We have many, many, many accounts. And it is not uncommon for us to come in the morning with an email from him saying, do you know what this is for? Or did you see this debit? Is this legitimate? Because we're fraud, those who scam are becoming better and better and better. So we pay a lot of attention to accounts and to administrative staff to help. We have over 90 active clients, so that's people we're working with right now, and roughly 115 million in assets. So one of the things we like to tell people, make sure they know, is that we work with whomever you chose. So your CPA is who we're gonna work with. Your financial advisor is who we're gonna work with. Your lawyer is who we're gonna work with. If you chose them and trusted them, that's who we wanna work with. We're not gonna come in and change everything up. We wanna work with your team. We also have more than 110 shelf clients. So those are people who come to us in their 50s, their 60s, their 70s, and say, I need someone as a successor trustee. I don't need any help now, but I have no family nearby. I had named my friends, but they're contemporaries, and they've just told me they don't want to do it anymore. I need somebody in my legal documents to take care of things. We have a voluminous questionnaire where we ask all kinds of questions because we want to make sure we have all the information we need to step in at a moment's notice. So we're going to ask everything about your financial accounts, contact information for your beneficiaries. We even ask, because we learned, that we need to know your parents' names, because if we are serving as your successor trustees, then we're coming in when you've passed away and we need to help fill out a death certificate. So we ask a lot of invasive questions. If we're also serving as healthcare, we ask all those questions as well. But then, if you don't need us, we put you on the shelf and say, we'll check in, you check in with us. If anything changes, give us a call. We'll check in with you every year or two and say, how's it going? Everything okay? I did have a client, and this happens, Jen had the same thing happen recently. I had someone call and say, okay, you need to take me off the shelf for a couple of days. I need some help with something. So I said, okay, we can do that. There is an initial setup fee for us to gather all that information and get it all in our very secure package. Blanking on the right term there. See, I have a technology block this morning. Right, Davis. So we do that, so we're sure that we have all of your information, and it starts what we hope will be many years of a relationship. And then there's no charge until, if you need us to act, then we take you off the shelf and do some work for you, and then we can put you back on the shelf. So until you need us, and that's your call, then we're just keeping all of your information and know that we have a relationship with you.
So what exactly does a fiduciary do? It's such a strange word. And then when I started working at Quinn, I've been handling stuff for my grandparents for several years, and I very much would like a list and a checklist, and to be able to know exactly what are all the things I should be doing for each type of client, and the answer is very frustratingly always, it depends. So it depends on how we're named, it depends on what's going on, it depends on how the paperwork's written. So it depends on what you'd like us to do, essentially. So oftentimes when clients are not shelf clients, right? So let's say they set us up to be their trustees for when they don't need us, and they don't need us until after they have passed away, then we're just administering the trust. That's probably the simplest example. So then after you're gone, the trust is our instruction manual, and we are going through and we are just following the law and following your instructions and getting the money and the assets to whoever you designated in the trust, making sure the final taxes are paid, making sure property is sold or distributed, getting everything wrapped up. So that's probably the simplest version. Things can get a little bit more complicated when clients want or need our help when they are living. So oftentimes what happens is we'll have folks who just don't want to deal with the paperwork anymore. And so they just, the bills start to pile up. I have one client who came to us, he's been with us for some years now, because at his retirement home, they were cleaning and looked in his closet, and he had years worth of mail in the closet. years worth of mail. A wonderful, lovely man, brilliant, a delight to talk to, handles all of his healthcare stuff, but just one day was like, I don't care, and just kept throwing stuff in the closet. So, he reached out to us and said, why don't you guys handle all the paperwork, handle all the finances? So we, went to the bank, we went to his investment agency, we looked at all of his investments. We keep his people on board, but we try to consolidate, make sure everything is balanced and kind of is going to live as long as he's going to live, if not longer. Pay the bills, file his taxes with his accountant, check in with him periodically. We really believe strongly, well, not only do we believe that it's mandated, but ethically, the transparency is really, really critical. So we provide, if not monthly, then quarterly accounting reports to our clients so that they can look everything over. This client in particular, though, right, he doesn't care anymore. So he asked us to send everything to a family member, which is common. So we really want somebody looking over our shoulder. In cases where we don't have someone doing that, we'll send the accounting report to the financial advisor or the accountant. There needs to be somebody who can look everything over, and that includes not only the financial statements, but our statements. So someone can come back and say, hey, what was this? What's going on here? We have one client where the family member has such an eagle eye that at this point in time it's a joke after years. When I send her the email, I say, okay, let me know what your questions will be. It's not an if, but it's great. It's really lucky to have somebody who's doing that. So the other function that we can serve is healthcare, as healthcare agent, and that's kind of what Tamara was referencing. Those to me are always, I don't want to say scary necessarily, but they're the most intimate, right? Because we're making decisions for you about your body and your medication and your physical well-being. And so that's why we ask so many invasive questions if we're handling that responsibility for you, because it's really, really important that we do what you want done, not what we want done. And oftentimes people will come to us, even if they've got children and great family relationships, and say, you know what, I want you to pull the plug and my kids can't do it. So you do it, which we can do. But it's hard because we get attached, we get attached to our people. And so I think the client Tamara was talking about, she's like, I'm really happy for you that you're ready to go. He's been ready to go for a while, but we're gonna miss him, So healthcare can get a little bit more complicated because you're talking to doctors and people are calling you in the middle of the night, and we're making sure looking at medications and talking to the nurses and coordinating with home healthcare. And so maybe working with Peggy and Katerina to figure out, okay, if the client wants to move from their home, what's the best place in town for them to live? It's the most comfortable, fits their budget. So there are a lot of moving parts. And then we can handle other things such as conservator of the estate or the person, which is essentially like a court-appointed financial or healthcare power of attorney. So if you did not have your estate planning documents in place, or maybe no one on that list wants to serve the role, then it ends up in court. So it's kind of the same functionality, but with more reporting and oversight from the court. And then also specialty trusts, like special needs trusts, trusts for children who sometimes have addiction issues or are on public benefits. And so trusts are created to protect their benefits so that they're not losing out on that while they still have some money to kind of improve their quality of life. Did I miss anything? I don't think so. Your turn.
This next is how do people find Quinn? And I do want to underline what Terry said. We're not here to say you have to come to us. There are other professional fiduciaries in town. And if we get a ton of referrals from attorneys, financial advisors, CPAs, but they always give 2 or 3. So know that it is a position of trust, and we encourage you to not only interview us, but others, because you want somebody that you feel a connection with and a trust with. It's an important position. We also get referrals from, well, we have several in common with Peggy and Katerina, and I'm hoping we have a meeting this afternoon on one of our shared clients. So we love working with a broad spectrum of people. We will do the same if you come to us and say, I want to make a change and I need a new estate planning attorney. My previous attorney retired. We will give you 2 or 3 names. So we want you to be able to have choice. We get referrals from friends, so people will say, they'll call up and say, a friend of mine has met with you, we'd like to meet with you. We do an initial meeting where we ask you to come in, or if needed, we can come to you. There's no charge for that. You need to get to know us. You need to be able to ask us questions. And again, we believe that you should talk to one or two others as well. So then just if you decide to work with us, then we go from there. But we're happy to meet with you and answer questions, because you need to know who we are. We can be appointed by the court, and we are sometimes appointed by the court, and we have more details about that later. They're often the most challenging. So we also believe that it's important as our core company that we need to accept those appointments where we can. So those can be difficult and challenging and time consuming, but we believe it's important to do that when asked. And particularly when attorneys we've worked with a lot call and say, I'd really like to give your name to the court, we're like, okay, we'll do it. We'll make it happen. One of the things that Quinn too, we believe strongly about is we have 4 right now licensed fiduciaries. We do internal succession planning. So one of the things when people meet with me, it's either with Shannon or usually with Stephanie, who's even younger. And I say, if you're a shelf client, you may not be working with me. I will at some point follow Jackie and retire. But we don't have every decade. We're missing someone in their 50s, but we do plan out. So we expect Quinn to be here for many, many, many years with our stable of fiduciaries. And we do meet every Wednesday and kind of have a brain trust meeting. So I ran into something unusual. Has anybody else ever seen this? And so we share and talk with each other. We also always name 2 people so that we actually can go on vacation, and there's someone in the office who can work if something comes up. There's somebody named in the documents, so we do ask that you name 2 of us so that there's always someone who can jump to it if you need us. Okay, I'll continue. So you call us up and you say, okay, you were referred to us. I'd like to come in and talk to you. The new client questionnaire is a ton of information. You'll say to us, do you really need this? Like, do you need the name of my parents, really? And when I learned that was when I had an absolutely lovely, one of my first clients was 103. She was an absolute delight. We were with her about 6 months when she passed away, and we had the conversation. She didn't have any family, so we had the conversation, what do you want done? So when hospice called me, I said, I know what she wants. So I thought, we're good. I knew exactly what she wanted. We made it happen. I knew what she wanted done until the mortuary called and said, okay, we've got the death certificate. We're missing a little information. I'll just send that to you. I'm like, okay. She was born in 1919 in Scotland, and it said her profession, for how long, her parents' names. I'm like, oh my gosh. Thank goodness she had told me she had a lockbox in her closet, and she said, I keep important stuff in there, and there was a lot of stuff that wasn't necessarily important, but there was a birth certificate from 1919 from Scotland with her parents' names. So we ask a lot of invasive information. There was also, I'm going to digress just a little bit. There was also a note in there that's in her handwriting that said, I would also like to give, I think it was $20,000 to my very good friend, Jane Doe, and her signature. So I called the attorney because that's not in her trust document, and the attorney says, well, it has no weight legally. She had 3 distant relatives in another country. So I reached out, the attorney said if those 3 agree, then you can distribute it. They will direct you to make that distribution to her friend. So I scanned the little note in her handwriting and sent it to all 3 of them, and they came back and said, do it. Yes, she would want that, which I didn't expect, I have to say. So we do try to do what you wanted done, even if it's not in the trust or not clear, but we always go to the attorney, give us some direction, is there a way to do this? We have a contract that includes, I'm almost done. We have a contract that includes all of our different services because we don't want to come back and say, okay, if you want us to pay bills, we need you to sign this one. You may not need them or use them, but it's just one single contract, and we just include it and put you on the shelf. You are officially a shelf client then if you don't need us for anything.
I think this is the point in the presentation where we start realizing that we've skipped all around our slides, so we'll see how it goes. So I did want to point out something. So Tamara was just saying, you know, we do our best to honor our clients' wishes, even if it's not in the trust. So in the example of this particular client, and we also have to refer to the documents as the final be all and end all. I have a client who is living and, you know, handles his healthcare, but wants us to handle the finances. And he is a charmer. And so we were going over his documents after he'd signed everything, and he's saying, you know, explain to me again how this works. What does this mean? And I said, okay, well, let's read this part. It's your money. It's for your benefit. I'm in charge of handling it and making sure everything is where it ought to be, but I owe you reports and I owe you responsibility, but it's your money, you know, but I have discretion is what's in the thing. And he says, okay, so this means if I call you and I say, I want $800,000 for a Maserati, then you give it to me. And I said, no, I do not. I say, no, let's find you something less expensive. You don't have that much money. And he says, no. You say yes, and then I come pick you up in the Maserati. So you're a charmer, no. So there's always discretion, typically, you know, for at least during the client's living experience. So then what does the work entail? I think we talked about this a little bit earlier. There's so much paperwork though. So let's say a client comes to us. First they have to go to the attorney if they have capacity, or if they planned ahead and named us as, you know, to help them later on in life. So first you're going to your attorney, and your attorney is the one who is drafting all the documents for you. So they're putting everything in place, and then if you're naming us to help right now, then usually we need to sign everything too, and it has to be notarized. And then we start the process of marching off and visiting every single bank and talking to every single financial institution or annuities or insurance company that you have on your list. And then just to make things more entertaining, they like to tell us that they don't care about the paperwork that you just spent all that money to put in place, and they have extra paperwork that they would like us to do. So it's a process of kind of getting everything updated so that all of those accounts reflect us either as your agent, your financial agent, in which case you are on the account and so are we, but we all have kind of equal access. Or if we are your trustee, then what happens, let's say you were your own trustee beforehand, you come off that account. So then we're on the account as your trustees. So that process is kind of time consuming and takes a while, and every single institution has their different rules. Sometimes we'll have clients who aren't quite ready to name us in their legal documents. I mean, it's a huge amount of trust to hand over to someone, especially when you've been handling everything your whole life on your own. And you don't necessarily know us that well, right? Like you have a meeting or two with us, and I absolutely second what Tamara was saying is it's important to visit a few different fiduciaries or trust companies, and I always tell people if you're in this room and you're not quite sure, you walk out and you're like, I don't know, we're not the right fit for you. You have to feel comfortable because you're putting so much in our hands. If you don't feel comfortable, not the right fit. So sometimes clients will think, okay, I feel pretty okay, but I'm not quite ready. And so what they'll ask us to do is just start with handling bill pay for them. And so typically what we do in that instance is we have a contract that we sign and you sign, and then the client will give us a set amount of money, kind of like if you've ever hired an attorney on retainer. So you would give us money, which we put in our trust account under your name. And then, you know, we pick up the mail from your house and we start changing the address to us, and we pay your bills out of our trust account. So we're not on any of your bank accounts. We're not on any of your investment accounts. And so usually what happens is clients will come to us and they'll start with that and 1 or 2 bills, and then 3 or 4. And then it's, oh, take everything. You know, like how can I not handle this anymore? But it's just trust building and making sure everyone feels comfortable. So that's another option. What else? Taxes. Tax time is always a little bit nutty. Not as nutty for the accountants in town, I don't think, but we have almost 100 active clients, and so we're making sure that we're gathering all the documents for all of those and coordinating with the accountants, who are all of course different because we keep your accountants unless you don't have one, and then we find someone. And then reviewing everything. There's tax planning and strategy involved throughout the year for higher net worth individuals, so it can get complicated, and then we have deadlines, of course. Our quarterly accountings, which we are providing those reports to everybody. We tend to have quarterly or semi-annual reviews with all of the investment advisors for all of the clients. So that's a huge project that's kind of ongoing as well. And then separately is if we're handling healthcare responsibilities, of course. And so those would typically involve things like care management conferences. So we'll meet with, it depends a little bit on where you're living. Most of our clients are living in places like Valverde or Samarkand or Vista around town. If that's the case, then they already have a support staff around them, so it makes it easier because we have people we can kind of lean on and who are communicating with us if the client's not quite able to do that. If the client's home, then oftentimes what we're doing is helping to find and hire trained, licensed, very important caregivers to provide them with support, whether it's companion care or medical care, making sure they're getting to and from doctor's appointments, logging on and reviewing all the doctor's notes if we're not accompanying the client to the doctor's visit, looking at all the medications, making sure, okay, well that was ordered, did it show up? Are we taking it? How are we feeling? You know, and communicating back and forth with all the medical people involved in that client circle, specialists and whatnot. So it can get kind of busy. It is never boring though. So, you know, last Friday was really hard, Thursday, because we had a handful of clients, 5 I think, who actually just went south really quickly all in one day, which was a lot. And 2 of them are Tamara, so she's got the brunt of it right now. So we've got everything from that to, I had a client, 92, call me yesterday and say, I don't think I can handle this cat. What are you talking about? And her helper pops on and says, I don't think she knows about the cat. So someone had decided that she could cat sit for 2 weeks, and she's not a cat person, so, you know, working that problem. So it's things of that nature. You know, you just never know what's gonna come up. And I think what also happens too is we get close to our clients and they rely on us for all sorts of things, and then they call us for things that aren't necessarily on our typical to-do list, but we try our best to help. You know, there's everything from, I have a client who is very, very complicated in looking at stock and gift taxes and how do we, you know, plan out gifting for a certain number of years with the tax legislation so that client doesn't get a huge tax hit but still has what she needs. So that's conversations with all these important financial people in the room. So it's a mishmash of everything. We have to transfer title to vehicles, which is my least favorite, although I will tell you that the Goleta DMV is the best. Yeah. Absolutely, hands down. So, okay, you already knew, I should have asked. Yeah, I suffered through a couple of the other offices first. And then, what else? What other little things am I forgetting? There's so much. ID, yes.
On the list of little things, a good friend of mine died about 8 years ago, and he was very active on Facebook. After his death, his Facebook account was still on, and we are receiving messages from his, it was very unpleasant and unbecoming.
Yeah.
Do you handle web presence as well?
Yes, we can, and that's one of the things that we ask about in our questionnaire is, you know, what are your passwords? Or at minimum, typically if we have the password to your email address, we can reset everything else if we know it. So my younger sister's father died unexpectedly really young, and that's what she ended up doing is they couldn't find passwords to anything except for his email. So they're on his computer at home and they're, you know, resetting Facebook and Match.com, which was a fun experience for her, and all sorts of, he was single, but still, you know, and resetting everything, and then you can go in. I think for Facebook and some of the social media sites, you can send them notification and then they can freeze the account. But it's still disconcerting, right? Because then years later, you're on Facebook and it's, I got one from my grandmother yesterday. My grandmother, whose affairs I handled, who passed away 2 years ago. It's like someone who you might know. And just email them again and ask them to take it down again. So everything's a process. Yeah, but we can, for sure. Next.
I won't touch technology today. So often nobody needs us until the end. And so, and the clients who come in, when I first started, they would come in and say, we don't have children, or it's a blended family, so we're uncomfortable picking one over the other. Now it's more common for people to come in and say, you know what, I just finished handling my parents' affairs. I am not putting that on my kids. I want somebody outside to handle all the work. I don't want my kids doing it. So, okay. For the ones, and we've gotten this question a few times, if they don't have children or relatives who live nearby, they say, well, how are you gonna know? If they're still living on their own, how are you gonna know? Or if I'm traveling, how are you gonna know? And so we, first of all, tell everyone that you have a fiduciary and this is who they are. You have our business cards. You can say, in case of an accident, call this person and put it in your wallet. You can put it on your refrigerator next to your post. Call these people. Particularly if you have pets, make sure that we know, because we do take care of pets. We had a super cute one that we said, well, we could make it the office dog, but we didn't. But we will take care of the pets. I have another client that we made, she's had some health issues, so we've got the dog and the cat taken care of for right now, and we'll see how it goes. So when we hear, so we are sometimes in the position of notifying family members, particularly if they don't live close by. They're not in constant contact, so we can do that. We do work with the attorney, so what happens is if you're a couple, the last few to pass away, then we step in as successor trustee. So then there's a process, right? And so the attorney is going to draft a notice of trustee to send out your trust document to all your beneficiaries and immediate heirs to say this is what they're doing. You have 120 days to contest this if you have a question. So in that time, we don't just walk away. So in that time now we're marshaling your assets and we're trying to find out where everything is. If you are living at home, we're going to call a locksmith, change the locks, so that it's secure. If many times the attorneys will, in the trust document, will talk about tangible personal property, TPP, and instead of having you come in every time you change who that statue or that piece of artwork or that piece of jewelry is going to, they'll put in the trust document that there will be a list telling you what pieces of tangible personal property go to whom, and it will be near my document. So look for that list, and if you don't find it after 30 days, forget about it. So we look for the list, and then we make sure we secure if there are pieces of property or jewelry or whatever that you want to go to somebody in particular. We make sure that we gather that up and make that secure. The rest is then we look at if you still own your home and it needs to be sold, then we start interviewing realtors. Like everything, we don't rely on one. We do talk to 2 or 3, and we try to fit for the best person for that property. So we make sure that we're always looking at the whole picture, and then we look at the property that's left. And if you haven't given us any other instructions, if you just said these items go to these people, we make that happen. And then honestly, we work with people who are very experienced at cleaning out. So it's, this pile is discard, this pile is donate, this pile is sell. If they're able to sell items, that money goes back into your estate, unless you've given us instructions otherwise. This is how we start marshaling the assets and doing what you wanted done. We always, always, always go back to the trust document. We are not making the decisions. We're following what you wanted done. So we are always re-looking that, particularly if you were a shelf client and we've been in touch and you've made some changes over the years. First thing we do, pull out the trust document. What is it that they said exactly? What did they want? Because they're very, very different. So we're always comfortable with that. What is that language? We keep notes. If we've met with you through the years, we scan those notes into the database, so we have a relationship with you. That's what we're hoping is a long-term relationship, because again, we're substituting your judgment for ours. And we do, my lady born in 1919 in in Scotland. When she made her list of things she wanted to go, she had 3 nieces who lived in a different country, and she had like 5, 6 items that she wanted to go to them. But she'd made the list before she downsized and moved into assisted living. So they weren't all there anymore. So I had to explain to the relatives, you know, I and one of the professionals who we work with who does this all the time, we went through everything. They're just not here anymore. She used to have a storage, but when she moved into assisted living, she got rid of all of that. So we do make it our very, very best effort, and we do run into unusual situations. And I think the dogs, I think you have the best story. Yeah.
I had a client, well, I never actually met her, which is always such an eerie way to get to know someone, honestly, because sometimes the attorneys will appoint us after the client's passed away, or I think the next slide is if the court appoints us, and then we don't necessarily have a relationship with the client. And so this lady had lived in Los Angeles and passed away. She'd been ill, but then very quickly at the end and passed away unexpectedly. And so we get appointed and find out that there are 2 dogs in this house in Los Angeles, and we're supposed to change the locks, and we're supposed to, quite wealthy, very, very fancy neighborhood. House is now empty, right? So we're scrambling. And I made a phone call to a realtor who we know, who works down there, and said, could you go hang out with the locksmith, please, and thank you, you know, find a locksmith, email them the paperwork, so we got that sorted. And then the attorney had the number of a friend who had gotten the dogs, thank goodness. So we were able to get that sorted. Otherwise, our realtor friend was about to have 2 extra dogs for the weekend. But we got that sorted. But these dogs had significant medical needs. One of them had to have shots, I think it was every 4 hours around the clock. So this poor friend, you know, this is not what she signed up for. So then I'm calling around, trying to find emergency vets that do boarding, that have staff all night long, which apparently most vets do not. So, and then I'm trying to find out, I'm reading through the trust, you know, and it turns out the dogs are meant to go to friends who live across the country, along with a gift. The friends are happy to have the dogs, but now how do I get, you know, Mitzi and Fluffy, which were not their names, tiny little fur balls, across the country when someone has to give them shots every 4 hours on different schedules? So it turns out there are companies that do that. But in the process of doing this, I'm calling around fancier and fancier neighborhoods in Los Angeles and veterinarians, and someone said, oh, try this phone number, and it's in our database somewhere. I basically ended up talking to Oprah's dog trainer, and this person who answered the phone was like, I don't think I'm what you need. I cannot help you, but call this place. And that's how I ended up finding this pet transportation system. And they have flights also, but we elected for driving. So it's these 2 folks who show up with, you know, hanging out with the dogs. I know that was my face too. I was like, what is happening? So just, you know, strange things happen. And then the other thing I was thinking about too, when Tamara talking about, you know, your paperwork being your instruction manual, oftentimes we're appointed by the court, and sometimes it's just post-death administration, and so then it's marshal the assets and the dogs. But sometimes it's while the client is alive, and so what can happen is the client appoints someone to handle their affairs, and that person can't serve any longer, doesn't want to serve any longer, is asked to resign for reasons, and now we have this individual we're responsible for, but we don't know them very well, and typically in circumstances like that, they have pretty significant memory loss, which makes it challenging, right? So it's kind of like this Easter egg hunt of talking to everyone in their circle and getting a sense of who they were and what they would want, but the documents aren't necessarily there. So you don't have their wishes, or you have a mishmash of wishes. And then the other thing we've learned is that, it sounds a little bit dark, but kind of trust no one, that you kind of triangulate. So we're talking to multiple people in a client's orbit and then trying to figure out the truth, which is somewhere in the center of that, because I mean, everyone's family is complicated, right? And so maybe I talk to this person and I think I've got the whole story, but then that person tells me something different. And so I'm trying to get the best idea of what this individual was like when they were really themselves. And so we have a lady, she passed away about a year ago, came to us in that fashion. And then she was advanced in her memory loss, but then she got really ill. She took a significant decline. She was on hospice. And the only paperwork that we could find in our records for what she wanted for end of life care was do everything necessary, which I did not want to do, but I was going to do because that's what she wanted, but I did not, I mean, it's awful, right? It's awful. I didn't want to do that, but that was my job. But the attorney who was involved had thankfully known her for years beforehand, so I called and said, do you have anything else that is newer? Did she change anything? And thank goodness she had, and it was just keep me comfortable. And then one of the weird things is she had put in her paperwork that she did not want to die in silence. She wanted music. And so, you know, then I'm running around on a Friday night trying to find a radio player or a CD player, which you can't buy anymore. You can buy a radio player, but you can't find a CD player except online. So we got that sorted. And so she had opera and jazz, and she passed that weekend. So we tried to follow the instructions, you know, as best as possible. I know it's I think if you like being, if you like the job to be consistent, if you like work that is, you know, always the same, this is not the right job. For sure. For sure. What else for court supervision? We handle conservatorships, which we talked about a little bit before. Those can be for finance, which is the estate, or the person, which is kind of like a healthcare agent. Sometimes it'll be both, sometimes just one. And those can be pretty challenging as well. And to Tamara's point earlier, oftentimes people will come to us in that circumstance because they didn't plan, or the planning fell through, or because everyone is fighting in the family and people cannot get along and cannot agree. We'll get post-death trust administration, same thing. So, you know, grandma's gone and there's this pile of money and everyone's fighting and people are stealing things and people are filing. We see a lot of people behaving badly. And so typically the court-appointed cases that come to us are a bit of a snarl because people tried to handle it on their own beforehand and it didn't necessarily work out well. But I kind of call it, it's like Marie Kondo, you know, when she was popular a few years ago about simplifying your life. It feels like it's like Marie Kondoing everything for the client. We're trying to just get everything back where it was supposed to be in the first place, and where the client wanted it, and then just make sure that we're keeping them as comfortable as they want it to be. What else? I know we're coming up against time, so.
You have about 10 minutes.
Oh, we do? Okay. Stories.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I think one of the things that is helpful is stories or illustrations, so of things we run into, and we spend a ton of time on the phone, and we spend a lot of time talking to, like yesterday I was on the phone, and they actually are a very good long-term care insurance company, but you know, every time I call, there's something new, some little thing they didn't have, and you know, if the person answering the phone wants to be helpful, they're not the decision maker, so you know, say, okay, my friend, I'm looking at my notes. We got this claim number on February 6th. We have yet to receive payment. Let me walk you through all the times and he goes, oh yeah, because he has all of those notes too. I said, we've talked many, many, many times. What else do you need? And I learned a new phrase. He said that the person I talked to last week was going through everything to figure out the NIGO. I'm like, what? I've never heard that. He said that's our internal for not in good order. So well, nobody told me that there was NIGO. And he said, no, I think we have it. Because they were looking at the invoices. This was to cover 24/7 in-home care. And he said, we're looking at the invoices, but you also sent the care notes. So we're matching those two things. I think we're gonna be fine. I said, okay, so when should I call back? So we spend a lot of time on the phone. I think persistence is like 75-80% of what we do. It's insurance companies, it's vendors. You know, first we call and say, okay, I need to give you, they'll say, are you Jane Smith? No, I'm actually her fiduciary. Okay, well, I can't talk to you. I said, I know that. Where would you like me to send the power of attorney? So first we do that, then we follow up. Did you get the power of attorney? Great, can you talk to me now? Well, no, we have our own form. That's great, send me that form. I'd love to have that form. So we spend a ton of time on the phone. Every financial institution, I think Shannon alluded to it early, every single financial institution has their own form. So they're thrilled to see your power of attorney, but it isn't going to be enough. So, okay. And when I first started, I actually had someone say, we don't accept powers of attorney. I'm like, excuse me? It's a legal document. I think perhaps you do. Although I will say the Social Security Administration does not. They make the rules there and they do not accept a power of attorney. So that can be particularly,
Cumbersome.
yeah, cumbersome's a very good word, cumbersome. So we spend a lot of time, we get better and better and better and better. I was gonna say, did you have a question? Do you wanna?
Well, just, I'm going through my parents' estate.
Okay.
Our fiduciary in the Bay Area informed us that the Veterans Administration is not part of the trust. They think they paid my dad out in his lifetime. And we had to generate letters of all the heirs saying, please show us where this check was deposited, because once our father died, the fiduciary had no access to his bank account, and he kept forgetting his password. This was Mr. Amazon King, paid everything on a credit card, automatic payouts bank account, so we didn't have his password anymore. And so, he's been gone over a year, and the state still is not settled. So then my other question is, do you have a list of things that you tell family members, you know this person's going to be going soon, print out the bank statement or something like that?
Well, I was gonna say, do you wanna?
Yeah, I can. So normally, I'm wondering if there's like a title issue on the bank accounts. First of all, I'm really sorry you're going through that.
Yeah.
So typically, if we were coming in after a client had passed away, we would be able to gain access to those bank statements.
Not at Bank of America.
Oh.
Shut the account and open up a new one with.
They are
We don't like them.
Yeah.
They are our least favorite bank to work with. They are extremely, extremely challenging.
And not only that, they demanded our fiduciary's entire business record. It's not like, here's my business card and here's my document.
That's crazy.
They wanted her entire incorporation document.
Oh, that's wild. That doesn't make any sense at all.
Never had that happen before.
Yeah, you know, it's really, with each of the institutions, I mean, sometimes we will literally just hang up and call back and get another human because you're really at the mercy of their rules and regulations. I have one administration right now, and the lady had, she was a UC employee. So she had 403B through the University of California, and the financial institution that holds the funds, it's just, my mom has this phrase, a goat rodeo, like it's taken forever, and the beneficiaries are so frustrated, and they're mad at me, and I get it, and I'm like, I don't know what to tell you guys, because every time I call this institution, they say, oh, this is how it works, do this. So we jump through 6 hoops, and we get the stuff, and then we send the paperwork, and they go, who told you that? No, it's these 6 hoops, and so it's taken forever to get them their funds. And you know, one of the beneficiaries emailed the other day and said, well, I don't understand how they can do this. They can't just tell us what to do. And I was like, they can, unfortunately. Like, we just have to kind of jump through their hoops, or you find another individual, but Bank of America is particularly challenging.
Yeah.
Merrill Lynch, the financial side of Bank of America is great.
Yeah.
The bank side is a hard, yeah. Yes.
I'd like to thank you for the presentation, a lot of good information. I'm glad that you indicated that each individual is unique, because to me that really raises the question, how do they best determine what is in the best interest of each individual? But I'm sure you have a system, and I'm not going to question that now. But what I would ask, since you're representing people, I've been alarmed over the last 4 to 6 months at the number of seniors that I come in contact with who, whether they know it or not, are being scammed or hacked. Do you have something in system where you're able to monitor and help these people if indeed they're being scammed and they're not aware of it, or their accounts are being hacked and they haven't really got into acknowledging that they're losing money?
Thank you for that question, because the scammers have gotten better and better and better. They are very sophisticated. So we are generally making sure that we have financial and power of attorney and are on the accounts. And so yesterday morning, our daily money manager, out of those 90 active clients, sent me an email and said, do you know what this would be for? So I called the financial institution and said, I don't think that's accurate. I do have a client, absolutely amazing woman, and I think we're on her 4th checking account, because they call and they are so good. They are so good. And actually now her bank called me this last time. Well, it started with her, she has someone come on Friday afternoons just to drive her around and help her do errands because she doesn't drive anymore. And then they went to the bank. The caregiver found out that she had written 2 $6,000 checks and put them in the mail to an address in Florida. So they went to the bank to say, wait a minute, I don't think those are appropriate. And he actually had told her, and I guess he was, that he was a fraud specialist. But he wasn't a fraud specialist with the bank. He wasn't employed by the bank. We showed her that the address she mailed them to was not a branch of the bank. It was a personal private home. So we not only stopped payment on those checks, we closed that checking account and opened a separate one. So we are, and normally I would say, let's change your phone number, because they've had the same phone number for a very long time, and it is circulating that she will engage, because there's been a series. It started before she hired us. Another bank that she'd done business with for many years, somebody had convinced her that there was someone in the bank, and she is a very bright woman. This is not that she's easily fooled. They are very good. They had convinced her there was an employee who was bad at the bank, and they needed her help to catch him. So she went and got a certified check for like $25,000. But the bank staff knows her, and she does not spend money like that. She had never spent that amount of money on something. She's very frugal. And that's when they started calling us to say, perhaps you need some help. And so we've been working with her, but this, I believe it's 4 checking accounts. So I monitor her accounts on a daily basis, and I keep the majority. I told her, this is the deal we have. If you want to run off to Paris, all you have to do is give me a call and I'll transfer the money over. But there's not enough money in her account right now to do that. So we're in very close touch.
I'll ask just a second. I was just going to also say, for some of our clients, we had a lady several years ago who was conserved, and the significant challenge we had with her is that she was a social butterfly. And so all of her accounts are in the name of conservatorship. She doesn't have access to much, kind of like this client where we've minimized the damage, but she would call the scammers back.
Oh.
She would save their phone numbers and she would call them back because she just wanted somebody to talk to. And then she was running around town and trying to pull money out from accounts she no longer owned, but she couldn't remember. And so it was tough. It was challenging. I mean, she didn't really have access to funds once we got everything in place with the conservatorship, but it was challenging. There's a company we work with called TrueLink Financial that we like a lot, and it's basically a prepaid debit card. And so that's what we gave to this client to kind of minimize the damage. We've got a bank account, looks like a credit card, right? But we are loading money onto it from the client's account, but that's all that there is. So the scammer can only get what's on there, and then there are all these fabulous little buttons that we can touch in a heartbeat and block things that are on the scam watch list, because they keep track of things that look suspicious. Or if there's a charge over X number of dollars, we'll get a flag before it gets approved, and we can say, I don't think so. So that helps also, but it's a moving target. Yeah. Did you have a question? Thank you, please.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. One is, how many people do you employ in your company?
7. I think we're at 7 if you count Jackie as consultant for Live Aid.
Yeah.
7, okay. And you have 200 clients, Shelf, and do you have an answer? How do you answer the phone?
We have someone for that. Although her name is Daisy, she's amazing. Yesterday was one of those days where it was just bonkers and.
The question is,
Yeah.
does someone answer the phone? or
Yes.
is
Yes.
that voicemail?
Yes, always a human,
Yeah,
Okay.
unless
unless after hours.
Yeah, yesterday, all the lines were lit up, we just had a crazy day, so you might have gotten voicemail. So, if Daisy's on the phone, then Maribel or JP will pick up. If all the lines are busy and it rings, Tamara, Stephanie, or myself will pick up as long as we're available.
What are the charges for your services?
So if you go to our website, starting last January, any licensed fiduciary in the state of California is mandated to post their fees on their website. So the website has not been updated yet, it's on the perpetual to-do list, but the fees are accurate. So basically if you're just coming in to be set up as shelf, there's a setup fee, it's $700 for an individual or $900 for a couple, and then nothing until you need us. If you need us and we are helping you while you are living, we bill kind of like a law firm, so in tenths of an hour, each person has a different rate. We try to shift the work to the most appropriate, but least inexpensive person in the office. And then for post-death administration, it's a percentage charge, which is pretty standard across banks and trust companies and whatnot.
May I just footnote one thing? And that is my concern on the scams and the hacking. The last few weeks, the ones that I've run into no longer are targeting send a credit card or get a gift card. They're now targeting seniors in one of the most important areas, health insurance.
Yeah.
Because you need your health insurance, you need Medicare, you need your prescription. And they're finding ways somehow to warn you, if this bill isn't paid in the next 3 days, you will lose this or lose that.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to alert people, if you get something like that, immediately contact your health insurance representative or the company if you
Right.
don't have a representative. Because that's terrible to try and tell people they're gonna lose their health insurance.
Yeah, our clients know if anybody calls and it needs to be handled right now, they call us. We're your first call. So let us figure out if that's actually true. Very seldom is true. Yes.
I have a Bank of America account. Which are your preferred banks that you like to work with?
Almost anyone else. We have a person at most of the other banks that we've worked with and we've trained, here's the power of attorney, here's the trust document, here's how it works.
What they use. What if we don't have an attorney? Do we need to get an attorney before we come to see you?
You can come to see us first if you want us to give you, like I said, we'll give 2 or 3 recommendations, but you do need to see an estate planning attorney.
But you can come see us first
Yeah.
and we can.
So we have to have our documents in order, our will and trust before we see you?
You don't have to have them in order. We do have people come to us and say, we're just starting this journey, and we have some thoughts, and we know we're gonna need, or we've determined we're going to want to use a fiduciary. So we can tell you, well, here's 2 or 3 attorneys you want to go to. Here's the suite of documents they will talk to you about. Probably is a pour over will, so everything pours into your trust, a trust document, probably financial power of attorney, and probably a healthcare power of attorney. So we are not attorneys and will not give legal advice, but we're happy to refer to different attorneys.
Thank you.
I don't know whether it's exactly what you all do, but what about when someone dies and they want to leave money as a trust that perhaps you invest, but then let's say $100,000 gets given out a year to various pet organizations? Do you do that type of service? I don't know whether that was addressed in.
We do, that's kind of a more specialty trust, but we do, so sometimes there are things like charitable remainder, annuity trusts, charitable remainder unit trusts, there are all sorts of different versions, but we have some animal trusts to take care of pets. So we have some where, yes, it's invested to a certain point, but in the meantime, the income's going out to certain people or organizations, and then at the end of a time period, it goes to whoever or wherever you've designated. So we can absolutely do that.
And is that mostly a COPF or other organizations where like an attorney, I guess, could also act in that capacity?
You know, you can find attorneys who will serve as trustees right now. It used to be much more common for attorneys to serve in that role, but what I'm finding now is most of the time they call us.
Okay.
They can do it, like an attorney does not have to be a licensed fiduciary to handle multiple accounts. CPAs, same thing, but typically it's not their expertise, and they'd rather focus on what their expertise is and have us do it. But you might find someone who is comfortable doing it. You could also talk to a bank company or a trust company, and then they just have different regulations. Like there's one, we had a client come to us and they had a significant amount of real estate. Their wealth portfolio was primarily real estate, and the trust companies that they talked to had said, you don't have enough cash. We don't want to handle that. So they have strange rules and ratios that they have to. So you just have to make a few phone calls.
Okay.
Yeah. Was there another? Yes.
I understand it's smart to have a backup fiduciary instead of just one, but since you have 4 in your company, isn't that good enough?
Yes.
Do you want to answer? Yeah.
So that's sort of our model, is to say there's always going to be a Quinn that we have, hence every decade. So we will continue to be in business well into the future. So we will have someone, with Jackie's retirement, she was named on several, so we're just slowly going through the process. But our language, generally, attorneys ask us, what is the language you want to use? At this point in the state of California, we have to be named personally. So we'll say, okay, name Shannon Dalton and Tamara Scove. They can serve independently, because if one of us is gone, you want someone to be able to work. If they are unable to serve, they can appoint another fiduciary at Quinn Fiduciary, another licensed fiduciary at Quinn Fiduciary Services. So our goal is that you don't have to go back, if when I retire, you don't have to go back to your attorney. That we'll still have, it'll be Shannon or Stephanie or someone we've hired since then who can move forward with it.
And the way that language is written, so if that's something that you wanted to do, so in our setup process, we usually ask, please let your attorney know that they can talk to us, and we will give them the naming language that we use because it's very specific, so we can both serve. So that way it kind of allows for this rolling succession, and it puts the onus on us to change the trustees, right? So if, let's say this is in 15 years and you're off in Bora Bora, and it's, you could be, yeah, then it would still need to be legally updated, but it's a relatively brief process, and we would go to the attorney and get that taken care of. Yes.
One more thing I want to add to that is we want to know. Please don't, we have had situations where Cottage Hospital has called and said, we understand you're the healthcare and this person had a major stroke and they're in ICU and we need you down here. We did not know, we had met with them once, but we did not know that they completed all of their documents naming us, and they had only done it 3 weeks prior. So the attorney hadn't even had time to send us copies. So we do want to know so that we have those conversations.
Yes.
If all my paperwork is done, my trust and everything else that goes with it, do I still need an attorney?
If you wanted to change who your fiduciary was, then yes, you would need to go back to your attorney, but it should be pretty quick. It's just usually a 1 or 2 page update.
I'm only going to add that I do have a very good friend, and she said all of my paperwork is done. And then the more I asked, it was done in the state of Alaska about 15 years ago. So the only thing I would say, it should be done in California. Just, that's the only disclaimer I'll put on that.
Well, and the other disclaimer too, depending on when your documents were done, the tax laws have changed pretty significantly. So if it was a long time ago, it might be worth reviewing it. We've seen some documents that are this long, and maybe it doesn't have to be that complex. But if it's recent and all you wanted to do was change your fiduciary, the attorney can draft that pretty quickly. Yes.
I use Google Calendar, and I somebody else that I wanna put in my advanced healthcare director, and I fix it. I don't have to think to remember it, I don't have to think, oh, was it 5 years ago? My calendar tells me it's time to do it again.
That's so smart.
Did everybody
Music
hear
to
that?
our
Because
ears.
that's a great, so she has a event set in her calendar for every 3 years to review her documents, her will, her trust, her healthcare directive. You know, do I wanna make any changes? Is everything still accurate? And I think that's a great idea. Thank you for sharing.
I mean, I now have it in my advanced healthcare director, that I want my feet lotioned every night before I go to bed. Be specific.
You can be as detailed as you want.
It's important. No, the more, the more communication, the more specificity, the better.
Yeah.
At least for us, because then we can make sure those things happen. And then that did just remind me, I just want to clarify, and then I'll stop, is we can kind of split the paperwork. So oftentimes what we'll find with people is they'll say, you know what, I don't want my family handling my money, but I want my sister, my daughter, my cousin to handle healthcare responsibility. And that's very common, and we can absolutely do that. So if you have one person who you want to handle those responsibilities, and for us to just handle the finances, we can do that. And if the situation arises where we need to work in tandem, we're very accustomed to doing that too. Just choose carefully, because we've had a handful of circumstances where the individual who is making healthcare decisions for mom or dad also inherits and will make decisions that benefit their inheritance and not mom and dad's continuing care at the end of life. And we can't do anything about it because it's not our lane. But we can do that. Most of the time that doesn't happen. And so then we're just kind of letting them steer the ship of, they tell us what the healthcare is, they tell us where they want to live, and we pay the bills. And then Terry, did you wanna? Okay.
We might have time for one more question. Anybody else? No, good. Do you feel more educated about what our esteemed fiduciaries do? Give me a hand. Help me. So, surveys, don't forget to fill out your surveys. I do a $50 drawing tomorrow for everybody that fills them out and hands them to me. And just for fun and appreciation for you guys showing up, for those who've been here before, you know I give away 2 $25 gift cards just for coming. So because I really appreciate you coming, pick one. One for each of you. There we go. Thank you. She's already left. Must be present to win. Bonnie. Oh. One for Bonnie, my dear friend Bonnie. There she goes. Helen, are you still here, Helen? Caldwell?
I don't know,
Helen? Oh. Aren't you Helen? Oh.
Helen, do you know your name?
Helen Caldwell. Yeah, that's what I thought. There you go, $25. Great, thank you. So next month's seminar, there hasn't been a lot of open interest in it. It was supposed to be from week to week. But I think I'm probably gonna change that. I haven't decided yet what it's gonna be, but I will let everybody know. Thank you so much for coming. It really warms my heart to see everybody here. Fill out your surveys, I'll pick them up at the door, and you're free to go. Thank you.